What if I told you that the prison you've lived in all your life doesn't actually exist? You see, we spend our days frantically running from the past and grasping at the future, never realizing that this very struggle is the source of our suffering. Think about it. We believe freedom lies somewhere out there in the next achievement, relationship, or spiritual breakthrough. But here's the thing. Freedom isn't found by adding something to your life. It's discovered by seeing through the illusion that you were ever bound in the first place. The moment you truly understand this, not intellectually, but in the marrow of your bones, everything changes. You don't become free, you realize you always were. Let me tell you something about this realization that most spiritual teachers won't admit. We have been taught that freedom is something we must attain, a destination we arrive at after much effort and striving. We imagine it as a state we will someday reach, if only we work hard enough, meditate long enough, or purify ourselves sufficiently. This is our first mistake. Freedom is not a destination. It cannot be pursued or attained precisely because it is what you already are. But we keep chasing, don't we? We chase freedom through achievement. We chase it through relationships. We chase it through spiritual practices. And the great cosmic joke is that the very act of chasing is what creates the cage. The harder you run toward freedom, the farther away it seems to get. Have you noticed this pattern in your own life? How the things you pursue most desperately often remain just beyond your grasp. You see, a fish swimming frantically through the ocean searching for water is the perfect metaphor for our condition. We are immersed in the very thing we seek, yet we remain oblivious to it because we're looking in the wrong direction. We keep looking outward, forward, ahead, when what we're seeking is right here. It's not ahead of you, it's not behind you, it's not even inside you, it's what you are. I once knew a man who spent 40 years traveling to sacred sites around the world. Ashrams in India, monasteries in Japan, shamanic retreats in Peru. He collected initiations and teachings like others collect stamps or coins. He could quote scriptures from a dozen traditions and perform the practices of each with perfect precision. Yet he confessed to me one evening, after perhaps too much wine, that he felt no closer to liberation than when he began his journey 4 decades earlier. In fact, he felt further from it. His spiritual resume had become another prison, his knowledge another set of bars. This is the first paradox we must understand. The more desperately you seek freedom, the more imprisoned you become. The very concept of seeking creates a seeker, and a seeker is one who believes they lack something. The moment you identify as a seeker, you affirm your own incompletion. You create within yourself a sense of absence that must be filled. And so begins an endless journey to fill a hole that was never there to begin with. We imprison ourselves in so many ways. We build these cages bar by bar, believing all along we're constructing the path to liberation. We imprison ourselves with time. We imprison ourselves with identity. We imprison ourselves with control. All forms of the same fundamental misunderstanding. Let's be clear about something. These prisons aren't real. They aren't made of steel or stone. They're made of thought. They're made of belief. They're made of our unquestioned assumptions about who and what we are. And anything made of thought can be unmade by seeing through it. Think for a moment about how we relate to time. We're always trying to get somewhere, always trying to become something, always postponing life until some future moment when everything will finally be as it should be. We live in a constant state of not yet happy, not yet peaceful, not yet free. This postponement is itself the prison. This constant projection into a future that never arrives keeps us perpetually bound. Now let me tell you about the first way we imprison ourselves, through our misunderstanding of time itself, and how this misunderstanding creates an illusory sense of separation from life as it is right now. The first way we imprison ourselves is through our relationship with time. This is the most fundamental prison, and perhaps the most difficult to recognize because we take it so completely for granted. We live our lives stretched between past and future, between memory and anticipation, rarely touching the only moment that actually exists, which is now. We think this is normal. We think this is simply how life is. But this divided consciousness, this split from the present moment, is the source of our deepest suffering. Let me tell you about the nature of this temporal prison. We walk around carrying the weight of our past like a heavy stone, dragging it with us everywhere we go. Every mistake, every failure, every moment of shame or regret follows us like a shadow. At the same time, we project ourselves constantly into an imagined future. We live for tomorrow, for next year, for someday when things will finally be different. We will be happy when we get the promotion. We will feel peace when we find the right relationship. We will be content when we retire. Life becomes a perpetual waiting room, and we sit there patiently, missing the only life we actually have. I knew a woman once who spent 30 years in a job she disliked, saving diligently for retirement. Each day was merely something to be endured, a stepping stone to that glorious future when she would finally begin to live. When retirement came at last, she found herself with plenty of money, but with no idea how to enjoy it. She had spent so many years postponing life that she had forgotten how to live it. She had developed such a habit of deferring happiness that when the time finally came to be happy, she couldn't remember how. You see, when we fixate on time in this way, something strange happens. We create a kind of timelessness, but not the liberating kind. It's a frozen timelessness where nothing is ever quite right, where fulfillment is always just around the next corner. We are never here. We are ghosts haunting our own lives, always slightly out of phase with reality. But here's the thing about this temporal prison. The door has always been unlocked. The present moment has never been unavailable to you. It has always been right here, waiting patiently for your attention. And in that present moment, in that simple recognition of what already is, freedom is not a distant goal, but an immediate reality. The second prison we build for ourselves is the prison of identity. We become trapped in a fixed idea of who we are, or worse, who we should be. We carry around an image of ourselves, a story about what kind of person we are, what we're capable of, what our limits are. And then we spend our lives trying to live up to this image, or perhaps living in despair because we cannot. Think of a river that becomes so concerned with being a good river that it begins to monitor and control its own flow. It should be straight here, curved there. It should flow quickly in this section, slowly in that one. It should nourish these plants, but avoid those rocks. The more it tries to control its own nature, the less it expresses that nature freely. What was once a dynamic, living flow becomes a tense, constrained trickle. This is exactly what we do to ourselves. We become so focused on being a good person, a successful person, a spiritual person, a consistent person, that we lose touch with the living reality of what we are. We sacrifice authenticity for consistency. We choose reputation over revelation. We opt for the security of a fixed identity over the adventure of not knowing who we might become from one moment to the next. I'm not saying you should behave inconsistently or unreliably. I'm suggesting something much more radical. I'm suggesting that what you actually are has nothing to do with any fixed identity at all. The real you is not a thing, not an object, not a collection of memories and desires and fears. It's much more like a process, a verb rather than a noun, a happening rather than a being. But our culture doesn't recognize this. Our language doesn't express it easily. And so we mistake ourselves for the story we tell about ourselves. We believe we are the character in the narrative of our lives, rather than the awareness in which that narrative appears. This is the great forgetting, and from it springs all manner of suffering. The paradox here is striking. The more you try to be something, the less you are. The more you grasp at a particular identity, the more you shrink your boundless nature down to a small, constricted concept. You're trying to fit the ocean into a teacup, and then wondering why you feel so limited. This obsession with fixed identity shows up in countless ways. We worry constantly about what others think of us. We strive to project a consistent image. We fear change because it threatens our sense of who we are. We avoid new experiences that might reveal unknown aspects of ourselves. We repeat the same patterns over and over because they feel safe, even when they make us miserable. Now, there are even deeper patterns at work here, patterns that lie at the very heart of our misunderstanding about freedom and imprisonment. The third prison we build for ourselves is perhaps the most ironic. It's what I call spiritual imprisonment, the trap of seeking enlightenment or freedom as if it were an object to be acquired. This is the most subtle prison because it disguises itself as the path to liberation. The very thing we believe will free us becomes another, more sophisticated cage. Consider how we approach spirituality in our culture. We treat it as another form of achievement, another notch on our belt, another identity to adopt. I am spiritual, I am evolved, I am conscious. We collect experiences like trophies, meditation retreats, workshops, ceremonies, plant medicine journeys. We measure our progress. How long can I sit in meditation? How many insights have I had? How many chakras have I opened? This approach transforms the sacred into the profane. It turns the formless into another form to grasp. It converts the pathless path into a spiritual marketplace, where we can comparison shop for the fastest route to enlightenment. This isn't freedom. This is spiritual materialism. It's the ego co-opting spirituality for its own purposes, using the language of liberation to reinforce its own existence. I once participated in a retreat with an eager young man who proudly announced that this was his 27th spiritual workshop of the year. He described himself as a serious seeker, dedicated to finding truth. Yet in his eyes I saw only more seeking, more hunger, more of the very restlessness he was trying to escape. With each new teaching, each new practice, each new insight, he was adding to his spiritual resume, but moving no closer to the peace he sought. His seeking had become a treadmill, giving the illusion of movement while keeping him exactly where he started. The fundamental paradox here is that the seeker is the obstacle to finding. As long as you identify as someone seeking freedom, you affirm the belief that you don't have it. As long as you strive for enlightenment as a future state, you overlook the awareness in which striving itself appears. The very structure of seeking prevents the recognition of what is already here. The fourth prison is our obsession with control. We believe, quite understandably, that freedom comes through gaining greater control over our lives, our circumstances, our thoughts, our emotions. If only we could control everything perfectly, then we would finally be free. But this pursuit of control leads to the exact opposite of freedom. It leads to constriction, tension, and perpetual dissatisfaction. Think about what happens when you try to control your thoughts during meditation. The more you try to make your mind quiet, the louder it becomes. The harder you try to stop thinking, the more thoughts arise. The more you resist an emotion, the more persistent it becomes. This pattern plays out in every area of our lives. The more we try to control life, the more it seems to slip through our fingers. What if I told you that true freedom has nothing to do with control? What if freedom is found not in perfect control, but in perfect surrender? Not in making life conform to your preferences, but in allowing life to be exactly as it is. Not in resistance, but in acceptance. Not in grasping, but in letting go. I've found in my own experience that the moments of greatest freedom, of deepest peace, of most profound connection to life have never come through control. They have come in moments of complete surrender. When I stopped trying to make life different than it is. When I stopped resisting what is already happening. When I released my grip on how things should be and allowed them to be as they are. This is not passivity. This is not resignation. This is the most creative response possible to life. Because only when we stop trying to control the river can we move with it. Only when we stop fighting life can we participate fully in its flow. Only when we release our tight grip on the steering wheel can we discover that the car knows how to drive itself. It's like a tightly closed fist, grasping, controlling, holding on. And then, slowly, the fingers begin to relax. Open. Extend. The hand is still there, still functional, still available for action. But now it's open rather than closed, receptive rather than grasping, and in that openness lies a freedom the closed fist can never know. Freedom cannot be grasped. Freedom cannot be achieved. Freedom cannot be earned or learned or practiced. Freedom can only be recognized. Freedom can only be allowed. Freedom can only be surrendered to. The central paradox at the heart of our misunderstanding is this. You cannot become what you already are. You cannot attain what you never lost. You cannot reach what is already here. The very effort to become free is what obscures the freedom that is your nature. You are the sky believing itself to be cloudy. You are the ocean believing itself to be the wave. You are infinite awareness believing itself to be a limited person. And these beliefs, these misidentifications, these cases of mistaken identity are the only things that stand between you and the recognition of what you already are. You see, the moment you truly understand this, something profound happens. Not something new, not an achievement, not a graduation, but a recognition so simple, so obvious, that you might laugh at how it eluded you for so long. Like finding your glasses on top of your head after searching the entire house. Like realizing the background noise you've been trying to eliminate is actually the song you've been longing to hear. So what is this moment of recognition that I keep referring to? What does it mean to understand that you are already free? Is it some special experience, some altered state, some mystical revelation? No, it's much simpler and much more profound than that. It's a shift in perspective so fundamental that it changes everything while changing nothing at all. This recognition isn't something that happens to you. It's the recognition of what you already are and have always been. It's not an event in time. It's the recognition of that which witnesses all events in time. It's not a new experience. It's the recognition of that in which all experiences appear. It's not something to achieve or attain. It's the letting go of all achievement and attainment. And here's the beautiful irony. The moment you stop seeking freedom is the moment you recognize it was never absent. The moment you stop trying to become something other than what you are is the moment you discover the limitless nature of what you already are. The moment you stop trying to get somewhere is the moment you realize you've never left home. But what does this mean practically? How does this recognition change your actual lived experience? It's not that your circumstances necessarily change, though they might. It's not that difficulties disappear, though your relationship to them transforms. It's not that you become some perfect, enlightened being, though you may find yourself behaving more spontaneously, more authentically, more compassionately. What changes is the background of your existence, the context, the ground of your being. Where once there was constriction, now there is spaciousness. Where once there was resistance, now there is acceptance. Where once there was fragmentation, now there is wholeness. Where once there was seeking, now there is finding. Where once there was becoming, now there is being. You still think, you still feel, you still act in the world, but you no longer mistake yourself for your thoughts, your feelings, or your actions. You recognize them as appearances within the vastness of what you are, like clouds in the sky. The clouds come and go, form and dissolve, but the sky itself remains untouched, undiminished, ever present. Think about it. When a cloud appears in the sky, does the sky need to do anything about it? Does the sky need to accept the cloud, or resist the cloud, or transform the cloud? No. The sky simply remains what it is, open and receptive to whatever appears within it. The cloud is not a problem for the sky. The cloud is not separate from the sky. The cloud is simply the sky taking temporary form. And so it is with all your experiences. They are not problems to be solved. They are not obstacles to freedom. They are simply consciousness taking temporary form. I'm not suggesting you should ignore practical problems or stop trying to improve your life circumstances. I'm pointing to a deeper truth that exists alongside all you're doing. You are both the changing river of experience and the unchanging awareness in which that river flows. You are both the person living a life in time and the timeless presence that witnesses that life. You are both the wave and the ocean. Is there anything you can do to invite this recognition? Yes and no. You can't do anything to make it happen, because it's not something that happens. It's what already is. But you can create the conditions in which this recognition is more likely to occur naturally. You can notice when you're seeking and simply stop. You can question your fundamental assumptions about who and what you are. You can pay attention to the present moment rather than constantly projecting into past and future. You can notice the awareness in which all experiences appear rather than being exclusively absorbed in the experiences themselves. Here's a simple practice. Right now, as you listen to these words, notice what is aware of listening. Notice what is aware of thinking. Notice what is aware of feeling. Don't try to find it as an object. Don't try to create a special state. Just notice what is already noticing. Notice the awareness that is already present. Notice the freedom that is not separate from that awareness. You see, the moment you truly understand this, you'll be free. Not because you've gained something you didn't have before, but because you've recognized what was never absent. Not because you've arrived somewhere new, but because you've seen that you never left. Not because you've become something different, but because you've recognized the limitless nature of what you already are. We began by considering the prison we believe ourselves to be trapped within. We've explored how this prison is made of nothing but thought, belief, and misunderstanding. We've seen how our desperate seeking for freedom only reinforces our sense of imprisonment. And we've discovered that freedom is not something to be achieved, but something to be recognized. The prison you've lived in all your life doesn't actually exist. It never did. You are, and have always been, completely free. The door isn't locked. There is no door. There is no prison. There's only the thought that there is a prison. And the moment you see through this thought, the moment you recognize the boundless awareness that you already are, in that moment, you are free.